everyone. My name is Yonglin Gorky, and I come from the Office of International Programs and the Department of Languages and Cultural Studies at UNC Charlotte. In this video, I will introduce to you a globally networked learning course that I taught in spring semester 2021. The course is Chinese 3050, Mobility of People and Goods in Chinese Life. Chinese 3050 is a topic course taught in English to anyone at UNC Charlotte who's interested in learning more about modern China. This course comprises of two parts. The first part analyzes the mobility of tea and people in southwestern China through the examination of a trade route called Asian Tea Horse Road, whereas the second part incorporates a virtual exchange component with Xidian University in Xi'an, China. Through the virtual exchange, UNC Charlotte students and Xidian students attended lectures together, worked in small groups to complete a group project called Mobility of People in Modern China, and created presentation videos based on their group project. As the first effort to deliver this GNL course, I will continue to collaborate with Xidian University. And in this video, I would like to share more about what I have done in order to prepare for the students in terms of what we did for the virtual exchange, as well as some of the future lessons that will apply. So prior to the beginning of this virtual exchange, I worked with UNC Charlotte students to prepare them, getting them ready for cross-cultural communication. The preparatory work includes the following: installing and familiarizing the students with the technology tool called WeChat, a Chinese social media platform for communication with Chinese students and faculty; completing Chinese cultural trivia, a weekly quiz that teaches students historical, economic, social, and cultural knowledge of modern China, and also listening to the lived experience of a guest speaker who has lived and worked in China for the past 5 years. So the GNL course, Chinese 3050, had a total of 4 synchronous meetings between UNC Charlotte and Xidian University. And the two sides of faculty and students agreed on the time prior to the beginning of the first session. So during the first session, UNC Charlotte students and Xidian students met online for the first time in large group setting, and then also learned about each university's basic information, such as the history, the current status, total number of enrollment, and some of the fun facts. So you'll see here that Xidian University is located in Xi'an, one of the ancient capital city in China. And then UNC Charlotte students learned about Xi'an, and also Xidian students learned about UNC Charlotte as its history with the founding chancellor, as well as its unique connections between Charlotte and the 49ers. So one part as an icebreaker of their first synchronous meeting is this spontaneous ice-breaking activities, during which time students will get their names randomly drawn by this name wheel, and then the drawn students will have the opportunity to ask questions to UNC Charlotte students, and then UNC Charlotte students will in turn ask a question to Xidian students. This group activity is designed because usually Xidian students are not used to volunteer to ask questions, to answer questions. In this way, the random draw number and relieves their anxiety to volunteer, whereas also increase the suspense of this activity. So the students were very concentrated. They were wondering, will I get called? Will I get called? So that part was a fun activity that lasted for about 20 minutes during the first live meeting. In the second synchronous meeting, we invited a guest speaker, Dr. Gary Sigley, who works at Beijing Normal University, to talk about his book, Mobility of China, which is used for Chinese 3050. Dr. Gary Sigley actually is, at the time of presentation, still in Australia, his home country. So this is a unique presentation participated in with people from 3 continents: Asia, Oceania, as well as America. Dr. Gary Sigley introduced his book as well as some of the important historical and cultural knowledge of the ancient T-Horse Road, and his lecture is very well received by both sides of the students. So for the third meeting, students were, because they've already been through half of the virtual exchange, they were able to spend most of time completing their group projects. And then during the fourth meeting, students, both sides, answered questions regarding future of mobility based on a common piece of reading. And also they did a fun activity of cultural trivia quiz to see who of both sides have the best knowledge of modern Chinese mobility. And actually, you'll see the slides here. And actually, the winner is a UNC Charlotte student, but who is from Saudi Arabia. He's an international student at UNC Charlotte. So, and then for the next part of the video, you will see the students' completed work. The completed work primarily include two parts. The first is the presentation of their project called Mobility of People in Modern China. So this group project is a collaborative project between UNC Charlotte and Xidian students. It contains 10 field interviews jointly completed by students. UNC Charlotte students interviewed their group members from Xidian University, whereas the Xidian University students interviewed their family members, friends, and/or their professors. So through the interviews, not only did the students learn about the interviewees' life stories in Xi'an and the days before they moved to Xi'an, but they also analyzed the similarities and differences, both in terms of the generations of the interviewees in China and also between the UNC Charlotte students as Americans and the Chinese interviewees. So in their final project presentation, completed by UNC Charlotte and Xidian students, they not only included their summary of the interviews, they also provided advice for future students as to how to complete this project effectively and maximizing the benefits.
Hi everyone, we are the college-age mutant ninja turtles.
Hello, we are the Explorers, and this is our group project part 2.
Hi, my name is Dawson Travis, part of the group Supreme.
I'm Xu Jiashang. My English name is Joshua, and I'm from Hebei, Changzhou. I'm majoring in communication engineering.
My name is Wang Xing, and I'm from Fujian, China.
My name is Irina Posnicker. I'm a Charlotte student. My Chinese name is Peng Anlin. My major is middle grades education with a minor in Chinese.
Hi, my name is Youngzi Yu, and I'm on the UNC Charlotte side of the Team Supreme group project.
Our motto, we decided to relate it to our group name, the Explorers. So our motto is, I'm not lost, I'm exploring.
Our mantra is experience the world because we feel that it fits the theme of mobility.
Next, we have Lydia Guo's interview.
Hi, I'm Guo Xiang. My English name is Lydia. I'm a sophomore student in Xidian University, and I'm also a local person in Xi'an. Xi'an has a long history and is the ancient capital of 13 dynasties.
Oh, do you think you will live in Xi'an after you graduate, Joey?
Maybe, maybe not, because I want to go to Japan for my master degree. I'm not sure will live in the future, but Xi'an is a livable city. Its style of life can be fast or slow. It all depends on you. There are many places of interest, and every holiday there are many tourists to play.
Okay.
Internal interview was by He Juntao.
Hello, I come from Shanxi, a province next to Shanxi. I have lived in Xi'an for 3 years. I got to use the life in Xi'an soon, but I still can't forget my hometown. So I will go back to my hometown in the future.
Xi'an people have a deep sense of identity for our hometown. We love our hometown very much.
Her grandfather was born in Xi'an, but he lived in Henan, and she feels close to her family, but her family does not live close to Xidian. People from Shanxi do not want to work too far from home or marry a person who lives too far from Shanxi, and her family had a big impact on her decision to go to Xidian because they did not want her to move too far away.
Through this course, I have a preliminary understanding of American students. What impressed me most is that they start to plan their life early and that many of them work to earn their living. I admire them a lot. Thank you. Bye.
So as for our internal interviews, we saw a lot of similarities and differences.
We are going to compare and contrast the internal and external interviews.
The first one is that we have realized that the majority of our Chinese peers are not from Xi'an. The majority have just come to Xi'an for their Xidian education.
Many of our classmates view Xi'an as a place that is temporary. Many students do not have relatives in Xi'an. And lastly, some students chose Xidian University because of their families, and some students chose to go on their own.
Another similarity was that the Gaokao, we learned about the Gaokao, and we learned that it lets students know what colleges they qualified for.
Next, we have some points of new knowledge that we learned about Chinese people and society.
Well, for Xidian students, we learned that this experience extended the knowledge of our own culture while introducing it to US students.
First off, we have that Chinese students have a lot of roommates in one room. So while we were doing our meetings with the Xidian University students, we noticed that their rooms are very small and compact, and there's a lot of roommates.
For the second, we learned more about American daily life, society, and culture in detail.
Next, there is an affinity towards their hometowns and going back to them, whereas in America, we generally are indifferent about our hometowns.
Last but not the least, we got to know friends on the other side of the world, as well as spread and absorb the culture.
Finally, we all have some advice for any future virtual exchange student.
Plan meetings in advance with a clear agenda. I also noticed it got more accessible to people once WeChat was being used instead of Zoom for us.
Maps are a great icebreaker.
First is to stay optimistic. It's always important to remember that there are bright sides to everything.
Some things to not worry about, even though it seems daunting at first, is a difference in political views. We did talk about politics a bit, but it was honestly really interesting and led us to the memes that brought our groups together.
And finally, the good outweighs all the obstacles. No matter what comes up, it's always important to remember that if you hadn't done this, that you would never have gotten to see so many things and meet so many new people and try so many new skills.
So throughout this process, Xidian University students and faculty members learned very useful techniques on conducting interviews, and also UNC Charlotte students really learned how to talk to people from a different cultural background, especially for some of our UNC Charlotte students who are Chinese speakers. The fact that they are able to utilize their Chinese language applied in parts of the speech was the interview was very, very memorable for them. The second part are the students' individual work of cross-cultural portfolio and final presentations. Cross-cultural portfolio for UNC Charlotte students is a collection of 10 to 15 items that students they obtain throughout this semester, such as pictures, news articles related to the ancient T-Horse Road, as well as interview quotes and or homework, memorable homework from their group projects. Students then wrote a 5-page reflection paper based on a few selected items from their portfolio and their cultural reflection of the entire semester, especially from the virtual exchange. Students also completed a recorded final presentation based on one of the following themes: tea, Chinese education, Chinese economy, tourism and cultural industry, or modern Chinese history. So for this final presentation, as a content experts, Students share their learning with the target audience of people who are interested in Chinese learning. Finally, for faculty members from both UNC Charlotte and Xidian University, although this is the first time collaborating, it's a very meaningful experience, and both sides met multiple times before, during, and after the virtual exchange to plan, reflect, and lessons learned. This is an ongoing process, and then the lessons learned are constantly being updated. But for now, for this presentation, faculty members from both sides agreed on the following lesson. First of all, encourage students to find their own way of ice-breaking activities, in addition to the large group exercise during the synchronous session. And secondly, articulate clearly the group project expectations to both sides of students as early as possible, and also send reminders, multiple reminders throughout the virtual exchange days. And lastly, set aside more time during the synchronous meeting to let students work on their group project, because finding a good time to meet every week or so has been very challenging. And also, good morning, and thank you for agreeing to come to be interviewed for the Globally Network Learning course. Would you please introduce yourself and tell us why you decide to take the course Chinese 3050?
Yeah, of course. Good morning. My name is Tate Mason. I decided to take this course, one, because I needed a credit that was a writing intensive, but also I was interested in learning more about Asia, culturally and historically. And I thought that the class description kind of mixed both of those sort of features.
So my name is Arena Postnecker. In Chinese is Peng Lim. And I took this course mostly because it was one of my last requirements for the Chinese minor. And I was actually pleasantly surprised when we were able to do the virtual exchange program, because I actually didn't know that that was a possibility at UNCC.
Thank you. So you mentioned that you're interested in Asian culture. So I would like to ask you to talk about the cultural learning from this course that you have obtained during the past semester.
Yeah, so over the last semester, I've been sitting in lectures hosted by Dr. Gorky, of course, and also working with students from Xidian University to sort of gain an understanding of how a student in China would go through their daily life, I suppose, as well as the differences between being a student here and being a student in China is sort of the big topic we focused on in my group. So I would say that sort of similarities and differences between daily life would be the big thing that I focused on in terms of the cultural learning. So
I want to ask you, like, did the virtual exchange component meet your expectations? Like, what do you think it will do? And, in what ways it met your expectation, and perhaps in what ways, it didn't meet your expectation? Can you share that?
I would say that my expectations were met in that it's an experience I hadn't, well, one, hadn't taken part in, but two, I had never really imagined this being like an avenue for a sort of studying abroad experience. Obviously, you don't get the full like immersion you would get if you were to actually travel somewhere. But I think that you still, obviously, I don't think it's a direct supplement for studying abroad, but I would say you get the feeling of like, oh, I kind of understand that culture a little bit better, or I was able to get a little bit of a glimpse into said culture.
Are there any other challenges that you can say I have successfully overcome and that can share with future students?
Yeah, so of course, there's a communication barrier when two groups don't speak the same language. Luckily, in both groups, there were students that were able to speak some English and students that were able to speak some Chinese, so it worked out. But I would say that this was a kind of a big hurdle for about half of the project, and then we started to directly type any sort of like long form questions or questions with like abstract wording we would type it into WeChat or into the Zoom chat so that it could be directly translated. But then, yeah, I would say the communication part was pretty hard at first.
Like, if someone doesn't have any prior interactions with the Chinese students, what would you tell them to be prepared for?
Definitely that it's not personal.
Mm-hmm.
Like that they may be more timid or quiet or shy, but that like it's just a cultural difference, and that once you find the one or two Chinese students in your group that are a little more comfortable, you can use them to help communicate with the other ones in a way that they're more comfortable. In like America, we're a lot more direct with our communications, but like in China, it's okay to kind of like use the grapevine to get everyone comfortable and like on the same page. You have to be willing to work a little more indirectly.
Understood. I think that's a very, very good point for our future students who otherwise, because not everyone will have taken Chinese before entering this course, and that's not one of the requirements. So my final question to you. So do you think this course has interested you to explore China more? And then in the future, do you think you're likely to participate in a study abroad program, either to China or to other parts of Asia?
Yeah, so the first part of your question, to be honest, I'm very interested in visiting Yunnan province now, and I really want to see how they've done the simulacrum between between culture and the tourism industry. It sounds so interesting, like somehow merging theme parks and history. I don't really know how they do it, but so yeah, I'm definitely interested in seeing that part of China. I don't
So
know.
what do you think is the biggest benefit for students for participating in virtual exchange then?
I think a lot of times when you study Chinese and like when you're doing this minor or you're doing Asian studies in history classes, the focus is a lot on ancient China or like maybe up to the revolution in the 50s. And we don't really get to see what China is like now, how those traditions and cultures have actually played out in modern times. And so having a virtual exchange program is super nice because you can actually see what they take from it. There's parts in our culture, our history that we don't think about. And somebody who would study American history or culture isn't going to know how we have developed from it. And so in that same way with the Chinese students is like, you can see that in a way that like you can't be prepared by just learning about history.
Yeah, I would say that, yeah, this class has made me want to get out there even more because there's so much that I haven't seen yet or experienced.
I would like to thank Xidian University's participating faculty members, Professor Zhang Weili and Professor Li Zhijun, as well as the Office of International Cooperation and Exchange. Thank you for your contribution. My gratitude also goes to the students at both UNC Charlotte and Xidian. Together, we created a wonderful and memorable global experience. Thank you for watching this presentation video.